Alright guys, you got another chance to make a really great video game movie. You can do this. You got several Academy Award winning or nominated actors in this movie. You can do this. God damn it. Assassin's Creed is the latest attempt at a good video game movie, and focuses on Michael Fassbender's character, who was a career criminal and is suddenly brought in by this corporation because he is part of a long lineage of assassins. His father was an assassin, and all of his relatives before were assassins. So he's plugged into this machine called the Animus to try and relive the memory of his ancestor, to try and find out where the Apple of Eden is, because this company needs it to find a formula for world peace. How exactly you formulate world peace is another question. Now, I've actually never played Assassin's Creed before, but I remember when the first game came out, and one of my best friends was showing me the game when I was over at his place one day, and it seemed like a really cool concept, and it looked like a game that I really wanted to play. I just had my attention to other things, so I never got around to it. So now we have this movie coming out in a time when video game movies are still considered to be crap. There's not been one good video game movie in existence, and I don't count Wreck-It Ralph because that's a movie about video games, but isn't focused on one specific game. And before anyone out there says Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, that's a comic book movie, not a video game movie. It doesn't count either. So going into this movie, I was hoping that we'd finally get a really good video game movie, but sadly, no. Not only is this not a good movie at all, but this might be the most boring movie I saw this year. And given that this whole year in film has been really underwhelming or mediocre, that says a lot. For one thing, the plot is actually really hard to follow. When the movie starts out, I thought to myself, what the fuck is going on here? But that opening was also the first sign of, oh shit, this is gonna be bad. Because it starts off with opening text, like giving the backstory of the assassins, the Apple of Eden, yada yada yada, and all that came to my head was Uwe Boll's Alone in the Dark, which, that's not a good sign if your opening of the movie reminds you of a shitty Uwe Boll movie. So it wasn't until about the halfway point where I realized, okay, I know what's going on here. The motivations are confusing, but at least I can follow it now. Now, I don't want to do this whole thing of, in the game they do this, in the movie they do this, because I'm not really that much of an expert in the game, but somebody I know who saw the movie with me said that in the game, they spend a lot of time in the past. About 95% of the games are set in the past in the Animus, whereas maybe 5% is set in the future. In this movie, it's almost reversed. About 25% of this movie takes place in the past, the rest of it is in the future, which again makes it incredibly boring, because all the stuff we have with the company is not interesting, and the dialogue doesn't even help either. The dialogue in this movie is bad because it ranges from speeches to exposition, and it's just not engaging at all. Now, as for the Animus itself, why is this a giant robotic arm that like flips you around, carries you all over the place? Why is it this overly complicated and laughably bad device? Why can't it just be a chair that you sit in? I mean, hell, Avatar had a better Animus than this movie did. You just sleep in a pod, and boom, your conscience is somewhere else. But when we go back in time, I thought, okay, maybe things will start to pick up. But it's just as bad as the future stuff. The action scenes are not all that interesting, honestly. There are a few moments where the action is filmed from a distance and the choreography is kind of nice, to where you can tell what's going on. And then other times it's like Batman Begins, where it's filmed in close-up and there are a lot of quick cuts, so you're confused and unclear on what's happening. And also, for being Assassin's Creed, these action scenes are far from anything resembling assassins. They're wide out in the open, they're knocking things over, they're almost blowing up shit, so they are far from stealthy. One other thing that really surprised me in this movie was how bad the acting was. You have several Academy Award winning or nominated actors, Michael Fassbender, Marion Cotillard, and Jeremy Irons, and all of them are pretty bland. Michael Fassbender is probably the best one, but that's not really saying a whole lot. He's really bland. His character's uninteresting. We don't really know that much about him except that his dad killed his mom. And before you say spoiler, that's the opening of the movie. So I'm not spoiling a damn thing. And then Marion Cotillard is probably the worst actor in this movie. And she's a very talented actress. We've seen her in a lot of really good roles. But here, she's just so blank and expressionless. It's shocking. As for Jeremy Irons, there's just not much to say about him. Ever since Dungeons and Dragons, I think he just kind of gave up. I mean, I said he was good in Batman vs. Superman, but yeah, he's just not good here. Not much else to say on that matter. And there's really not much else to say about Assassin's Creed either. There is one scene in particular that's so laughably bad and unintentionally funny that I really want to talk about it, but I'd be spoiling a section of the movie if I did. So I'm just going to wrap things up here, and I'll talk about that scene in my worst of list, because this movie is going to make the worst of list. Assassin's Creed really had potential. It had a great cast of actors, but they just screwed the pooch. It's boring, it's bad, it's boring, the dialogue's horrible, the acting's bad, it's just uninspired, and yet, at the same time, I can't really get mad at it, because while I left disappointed thinking that this would be the one, I never found myself angry. I just say don't waste your money on this movie. It never made me mad, but this is one movie that if you watch it, you're gonna fall asleep. And I swear, I fell asleep in this movie. There's just one point where I'm just like, it was that dull. So just don't waste your money on this thing at all. Go see something else. Go see Rogue One again. And that's my review for Assassin's Creed. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment down below and tell me what your thoughts are on the movie, if and when you've seen it. And as always, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there is only one.